You're listening to FitPro Sessions with Parallel Coaching, Season 4, Episode 10. Hi, I'm Neale Bergman. In today's podcast, Hayley and I are wrapping up the entire Season 4 with our best bits, so stay tuned.
Hi, I'm Neale Bergman.
And I'm Hayley Bergman. Over the last 10 years, we've helped thousands of fitness professionals to get qualified, learn with simplicity, and coach clients with confidence.
We're the first to say that learning and being a fit pro doesn't have to be hard work, and that with the right structure, support and resources, you can become a confident and knowledgeable fitness professional that is dedicated to more.
So how do you learn, qualify and kickstart as a fit pro? This is the FitPro Session Podcast with Parallel Coaching.
So here we are, final episode of the season, Season 4. It's not the final episode.
No, you don't get rid of us that easy.
Not at all. it's the final episode of Season 4. So this is Season 4. It is.
It also marks that we've gone past a year of this.
We have been going, we started off in early November and we kick-started with an episode a day for 14 days.
Yes.
And it is now the 28th of December. No, 28th of November. I'm in a different month. So we have been going 1 year and 14 days. We are exactly 64 weeks old. We've had thousands, tens of thousands of downloads and views. It's phenomenal. And I have enjoyed Season 4 the most.
I think I have too. I think it's
Not
my
gonna
favourite. They're getting better. Although Season 2, FitPro Beginnings, was also very, very good.
I think
targeted.
I've diverted more people than ever back to Season 2, which is FitPro Beginnings. It's only 4 episodes. It's like 4.5 hours of binge listening. So if you are starting out in the fitness industry, it's the place to go.
The thing I love about that was how actionable it was. So it was literally like, listen to this, do this. Listen to this, do this. And then all those little niggling questions about starting out in the industry are done.
Completely.
But we're talking about Season 4
today. Do you know what? I've loved Season 4. I think mainly because, and this is what this episode is about. It's wrapping up the entire season, and I think it needed it. It needed some closure. It needed some closure. Because we've enjoyed it so much. And each episode, FitPro Session, we have deep dived into one of the common clinical conditions, maybe a couple more on some of them. And it's just been like down the rabbit hole of like science. We've had a giggle, we've had fun, we've talked about past clients. And I think it's brought to the top of my mind, tip of the tongue, all about the rise of common clinical conditions. It's brought to the forefront of we're here in the health and fitness industry. And I think it needs kind of a summary ending episode to wrap it all up and kind of finally put the stamp on it and get as many people taking action in the fitness industry, fit pros, you listening, to go out and kind of fight the good fight around clinical conditions, because it's only getting worse. Yeah. The numbers are only going up.
One thing I found when I was doing the best bits and I was working through, listening to all the podcasts, working out what my favourite bits were, one thing I noticed is that these things, the whole of Season 4 is totally our values.
Yeah.
It is 100% a summary of parallel coaching.
Of I and you and I.
Of us. That being dedicated to more with working with clients, and also that understanding of common clinical conditions, diving deep in the knowledge, but also making it easy to understand.
Yeah.
So like how we teach is just wrapped up in Season 4, which I've loved.
If you could have one overarching takeaway.
I've got one.
Go for
I
it.
know my favourite
moment. Oh, no, overarching.
Not just moment, my favourite episode.
Okay, no, don't go down the episode because we can do that very shortly. Be overarching message. What would it be?
Overarching message. You always put me on the spot.
I do, don't I? I try to. Do you want me to go first? I'll go first. So my overarching spot is you're going to get clients. And I know this because I've had clients that have like 5K running goals, 10K running goals. They want to build some muscle. They want to lose some weight. They want to get into their bikini ready for holiday. They want to go on holiday, take their top off. They've got these, what I class as kind of performance-based goals. Okay. But this episode, or this season rather, has allowed us to fully ascertain that even though that is their primary goal, a client comes in potentially with a common clinical condition, whether that be asthma, that they've not used their inhaler for several months or years, all the way through to being obese or low back pain. They've got rheumatoid arthritis in their fingers. It's how do I still get their goal, even though they come in having referred a PAR-Q? And that, for me, really does summarize this overarching method or process of working with clients.
Yeah.
Because
Nice,
it doesn't stop them from hitting. They could have hypertension and they could still get a park run PB. They could have low back pain and still get their weight loss goal and get on the beach with their top off.
Yeah.
Whatever their primary goal is, it doesn't stop them from achieving their goal. But our route to making that happen has contraindications.
Yes.
It has medications. It has many hurdles in our way, but it doesn't have to stop us. And that's what I love about working with clients, because
That's cool. And that was your big takeaway.
that was my
from
big
season
takeaway.
4.
Yeah.
Mine is that
You're still thinking, I can see. For those of you who can't see, Hayley's like tapping her hands like, I need to think of something.
No, I have it. Is that so often people say they want to help people, and that's why they got into fitness, was to help people live a better life.
Yeah.
And I really think that when we dive into understanding the health side of health and fitness industry,
Perfect.
that at that point you help the most people, and that most of the time that didn't come from the exercises or training someone really hard. It came from the overall lifestyle change, the overall activity, the overall health.
And there's massive hidden benefits on there as well, because you impact, say, one person and you impact that entire household. So somebody could have, for example, let's just say low back pain. Okay, and you tackle their low back pain, you sort out their range of movement, their posture, their postural imbalances, whatever it might be. You plan a much smarter approach to overload, and then you'll now find that they can do different things around the house, which impacts the husband, the wife, the partner, the kids, which means they can now go down the park and
you help people on a greater life level.
And there's so many hidden benefits to so many other people just by you impacting one person. That's wicked.
Right, let's do best bits.
Best bits.
We're going to run through each of the 9 episodes.
Episode 1.
So this will last about 9 hours.
Whoa.
No.
No way. So episode 1 was the rise of common clinical conditions.
Yes.
This is where we set the scene. So over to you, Hayley. Best bits.
My best bit of this one actually overlaps to what I said was my best bit overall, was that it starts with us as fit pros in order to flatten this curve of this rise in common clinical conditions, and that as fit pros it's time to now put the health back into the health and fitness
Completely,
industry.
because
like we proper put a flag in the sand.
And you've got to put a flag in the sand and have your mini manifesto and say, this is who I help, this is what I'm going to do. Classic like William Wallace back in the day, you know, that just says, I'm leading this, because without...
Get the face paint out.
Yeah, completely. What colour face paint would you have?
Blue.
I'd go red. Blue and red. There we go. It's our favourite colours. Anyway, we digress already. But I think if, genuinely, like, common clinical conditions are on the rise. It doesn't matter what condition you look at, they are all rapidly rising. The numbers, the prevalence of obesity, of metabolic syndrome, of rheumatoid arthritis, of low back pain, of joint replacement, it doesn't matter which one, where you look, the numbers are going up, astronomical. And if you make comparisons to, say, back in the 90s, it's tenfold greater. Go back to the 70s, it's even greater again. It's on the steepest curve. It's like a runaway train. And I think,
if we're going to slow that down, it's a health approach.
It's a health approach, but it's also in the trenches approach. Okay, so it's not just the FitPro's responsibility for yoga, Pilates, PT, bootcamper. It's for nutritionists, it's for dietitian, it's for osteopath, it's for physiotherapist, it's for chiropractors, it's for GPs, it's for consultants. It's a holistic approach, it's a network approach, it's a multifaceted team, and we all have a role to play. But what I love about the FitPro's role is you are genuinely in the trenches way more than most of the other people I just mentioned, because
and you impact so many more parts of each lifestyle, don't you? Because it's not like just say, I'll just say, like, for example, an osteopath would just work with the spine or just with the bone joint alignment.
Yeah, completely.
So they've just done that one bit, whereas you as a fit pro, as a PT, are like across all of it.
Well, I think the PT,
love that.
yoga Pilates person, the fit pro, has the highest kind of touch point with the client than many other people that are in that team. So you hold the greatest level of accountability. And so I genuinely believe I have the highest level of behavioural change that a client has access to. I genuinely believe that. And that's what I mean about the flag in the sand, the mini manifesto. I help people that have yada, 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 X, Y, and Z without having to cut through all of the noise and of what to do. I've tried diets before, it didn't work. I've tried this move before and I still get pain, it didn't work. You're the first person that could genuinely turn up on that person's doorstep and go, I've got you back, I've got your 6. And I'm going to help you. I'm going to hold you accountable for all 168 hours of a week, and bam.
Bam.
And I don't think if you look at other industries and you look at other people that could also be responsible, I genuinely believe the FitPro is in the perfect position, the perfect place to take the stand, because of the that's exactly what your qualifications are designed to do.
Yeah.
Is to put the health back into health and fitness. And the reality is the majority of your clients are going to be referring PARQs, and that is a surefire sign that there's people out there that you need to help.
Yeah, so that helping side comes into the whole health of your client.
Completely.
And that was episode 1.
Completely. You can tell I'm pretty passionate. I got mega passionate in that, because I think that, I don't think I know that Hayley and I, or individuals as individuals as well, we have fully put the flag in the sand, because we've helped so many people pass exercise referral and level 4. So let's just, I think
another key thing actually about this episode that I loved was that early on in it we spoke about our journey throughout exercise referral and who we've worked with conditions.
And that's what I mean. So if we go back to our starting points, we worked with, let's just say across the year, let's just say 100 clients. Okay, and I know you've worked with way more than that.
Yeah.
But through qualifying well over 1,000 people in exercise referral, if you all went out and worked with 100 clients across a year or a couple of years, okay, we've now indirectly impacted 100,000 people. So my flag's like firmly in the sand. It's how many people can I help on a geometric scale.
And that I do love that about the fact that once we qualify one FitPro, they might go on and work with hundreds, thousands of
completely
clients and really create change.
Yeah.
And that's all with our values, all with our understanding.
Like if you, I won't mention the lady's name, but she passed exercise referral about a year ago now, and then has gone on to do level 4s and has gone on to do another level 4 with BACPR. And the amount of people they've gone and impacted is phenomenal. And the kind of the small stories they've talked about, even though are, I'm not going to say insignificant, but they're minor things to this person's life that they've impacted, but have had phenomenal results from. And what I mean by that is like, it's the small hinge that swung the biggest door. And it was the small comment back from their client to this person that it was like, almost like such an insignificant part of their program, yet it made the massive difference to their quality of life. And that all came from the initial small hinge of us putting our flag in our sand.
Yes.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Rise of common clinical conditions. I think it was one of my favourite. Episode 1. Favourite one.
Was your favourite?
I did like it. I can feel that passion coming out.
Oh, okay. Well, you wait, because you'll get this on the
You need to remember
others.
you're looking in the screen as well.
I was looking at the notes for episode 2.
There we go. So for those of you that are listening, Hayley was like, is bounding her head back and forth on and off screen.
Okay, so episode 2.
So go for it.
Episode 2 was all about silent cardio killers.
Yes.
And this one, my big takeaway, my big sort of best bits from this one was how we looked at the difference of activity and lifestyle as an intervention versus using medications, and the knock-on effect that had over time, that ripple effect.
Oh, right. Segue.
And it worked really nicely in terms of saying, well, activity and lifestyle only ever has a positive outcome as a way of as an intervention against common clinical conditions, particularly those that are related to cardiovascular conditions. So hypertension, hypercholesterolemia were the ones we dived in deep onto. And we said that by doing activity, looking at lifestyle, changing nutrition, these habit changes only had a positive impact on somebody's world as that ripple effect set in. Whereas those that relied just on medication alone and didn't focus on activity or lifestyle or nutrition actually started to have a negative impact on their world. So although it might have managed the condition in the moment,
acute, day to day.
Yeah, exactly. It actually still over time led to other conditions or other problems or other symptoms that actually stop you from.
Well, the comorbidities of cardiorespiratory ones like hypertension and things like obesity and type 2 diabetes. So if you keep doing what you are doing, you're going to get what you've always gotten.
Yeah.
Classic Tony Robbins quote there.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. If they rely just on the medication alone, they haven't had a behavioural change. And that's what we're saying here is something must change outside of managing the condition with just medication alone. And that's really what a GP or consultant or medical professional is going to advise first and foremost.
Yeah, and that we looked at that sort of whole intervention of everything together, which again is what we talk about on exercise referral so much, that it isn't just about, oh, well, they've got the medication, now it's great.
Yeah.
Or they've got the medication, now they're going to do some activity. It's the nutrition and the mindset.
The two big things that came for me for that one was the importance of NEAT, so non-exercise activity thermogenesis. And that links nicely to the second point. So let's stay there actually, because exercise alone is just let's just say 30 minutes 3 times a week, the kind of the real minimum ACSM guidelines, is still not quite enough, to be honest, to have an impact on someone's healthy heart.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's too small a chunk out of every week.
The dose response is just too small. And so increasing someone's NEAT, so non-planned activity, that's activity around the house, that's increasing more steps, that's out and about in the garden,
standing up when you're on the phone.
Completely. Yeah. I think that as a message, a behavioural change message, has a huge impact across for 168 hours of a week, which leads nicely on to the other kind of hidden benefit I got from that particular episode, was that we're talking about someone's heart, we're talking about someone's blood pressure, specifically on hypertension. And so let's say, like, we all know that the healthy kind of blood pressure range is 120/80, right? Okay, so let's just say we go stage 1, stage 2, stage 3 hypertensive. The client starts that at a point where their blood pressure is elevated. They're starting at a point where their heart is working considerably harder than their healthy heart counter peer that's next to them doing burpees.
Yeah, their heart's already working
It's already working hard. And so it's this appreciation for overload, this appreciation that exercise in itself, whilst is a healthy habit, is something that does impact, has a healthy...
It is a stressor.
But it is a stressor, right, that's right. Yeah. It is a stressor in its own right. And so understanding on the spot, training acute variables of sets, reps, tempo, time, range of movement, volume, training systems, peripheral heart action, specific training systems is absolutely fundamental, because we could easily be doing more harm than good without even knowing about it, because on the surface level, it's just a series of exercises. And that's the overarching message I got from that particular episode, was exercises are the last thing to be planned, regardless of who you're working with.
Yeah.
Because if we know who I'm working with, we know what I can and can't do, I can then start to whittle down all of the things that are in my scope of practice to say, right, this is the order of exercises. These are the exercises I'm going to stay clear of. These are the exercises I'm going to include.
Knowing what they can and can't do, knowing how to look for signs and symptoms of stuff getting worse.
Yeah, completely. And it's looking at, well, in which case now I really do need to focus on NEAT.
Yeah, nice. Okay, yeah, that's an awesome takeaway.
Thank you.
I like that.
Thank you very much.
Let's go episode 3.
Episode 2? No, episode 3, you're right.
3? Episode 3. I was like, I know I'm right.
Haley's always right.
No. So episode 3 was a FitPro guide to respiratory conditions.
Yep.
So we looked at COPD and asthma. And this one was cool. Like, my big takeaway here was Clive. All day long.
I remember Clive.
Do you remember Clive? Now, I could talk about my old clients like mad. I could talk about them all day long. However, this one with Clive, the takeaway for me was that Clive had COPD, so we created a status test for Clive.
Yes.
And this status test was that in order to measure that he was improving his fitness, instead of looking at a specific VO2 max test, we created a status test. And that's what my takeaway from that episode was that when you're working with a client, especially a health related client, they might not be appropriate to turn around and do a full VO2 max test running or whatever. You can just create something.
And that's where in that episode I talked about my client where we walked from her house, and it was exactly a mile to the seafront, and we used the same route. We used the same conditions, same time of day to test that
and start
overall
marking
fitness
improvements.
completely. And we could do that in week 1, week 4, week 8, and we could see remarkable improvements. And I think we also discussed VARTEC at that point. So the acronym of VARTEC, so making sure that test is valid, accurate, reliable, reproducible, timely, enjoyable, and cost. And that's what the final part of that is, cost being not just the financial side of cost, but the psychological, emotional side to cost. Because if I'd have chosen a test, or you'd have chosen a test for Clive that psychologically hindered him, if that makes sense, in terms of his self-belief, lowered self-efficacy, then Clive might not have continued. So it's for psychological cost and making sure that the test is appropriate for that client at that particular time.
Yeah, and that comes back to that. There is no right or wrong. There is only appropriate.
Yeah.
So there is no right test that you must do. There's no wrong test that you shouldn't do. But there is appropriate for that client in that time frame.
Cool. For those of you that obviously you can't see this on screen, or even see it through listening, which is a strange thing for me to say.
Podcast.
I'm trying to give Hayley as many signals as possible of, could you pass me my cup of coffee, please?
Oh, is that what it was? I thought you were telling me to stop using my hands so much. I was like, okay, I'll sit on them.
Now I've got my cup of coffee, I can continue. Amazing.
I didn't know that this meant that.
I've been like trying to do like as many signs off camera as possible.
You should have just gone
I was like COFFE. I was like, I'm just going to say it. So there we go. Do you know the other big takeaway I got from the asthma and COPD was that if somebody has asthma, they do refer a PAR-Q. And I remember saying in that episode that asthma is seen as this condition of, it's like, it's almost so common that we don't, and that's why it's classed as a common clinical condition. Common doesn't mean that we can take our eye off the ball. Common doesn't mean
no risks happen.
But no risks happen. And actually the fact, like, let's relabel the word common clinical conditions. Common means we will commonly see them. Common means that we have a highly likely that a client will turn up with it. And therefore, if it's a common clinical condition, it means that we need to have our eyes on the game tenfold. Because if a client doesn't have an asthma pump with them and something does happen, and we talked about exercise-induced asthma. We did. And we talked about intensities of a warm-up, the intensities of a cool-down in that episode. The risks are phenomenal. The last thing you want is to have a client that is starting to cough or starting to wheeze, or you see signs and symptoms of an asthma attack or some kind of respiratory reaction is on course. And the likelihood is this doesn't happen necessarily on session or straight away after. It's after the session, once they're at home on their own. And so there's a full duty of care. Just because they've got asthma doesn't mean we go, well, oh, you've got asthma, you've had it for 30 years, or I know loads of people have got asthma, it doesn't make any difference. Like, asthma is a common clinical condition and has the same kind of weighting in my head as someone that's got hypertension, somebody that's had
risks associated.
The same risks are associated. Whether someone's had a triple heart bypass 6 months ago or someone's got asthma, the outcome at the highest severity end is still death. And so I know it's quite a morbid thing to say.
So you talk about managing that managing it alongside the exercise that you do. And again, we brought back NEAT and talking about how actually sometimes it's best just to get them more active.
Completely. And I think I just wanted to have that kind of like that flag in the sand and say, you know, just because someone's got asthma doesn't mean that it doesn't have the same weighting as someone that's had a triple heart bypass 6 months ago. It's still a clinical condition, and it's still... A condition is a condition. A condition is a condition. Cool,
still something you've got to factor in. Do you want to dive into that? Should we dive into the next one?
Let's go for it.
This one, I think, is Neale's favourite.
Was it obesity?
Yes.
It was.
Obesity and metabolic conditions. Now, I put this as our big takeaway as about Mary. So this was about how many years it took to lose the fat that was on Mary's body. And as a result, the obesity and fat loss is a behaviour change issue, not a work hard in one exercise session issue.
No, so it's about unmet expectations is the fastest road to disappointment.
There you go.
Okay, and so if a client has an expectation that this is going to be a quick fix, or they are trying to have a quick fix, then they're only on the fastest route to disappointment.
Yeah.
Unmet expectations is the fastest route to disappointment.
I think we should frame that.
Yeah, I loved working with Mary. It was just the most magical time as a trainer in the trenches to experience what it was like for this elderly lady day to day, a quality of life of what I suppose took for granted in my world. And I think it was the first point where empathy truly was practiced. Like, it's one thing saying, what makes a great fit pro? You've got to be energetic. You've got to be motivational. You've got to be empathetic. And you're like, okay, cool. How do I learn empathy? It's like, it's not really, it's learnable, but you've got to, it's practicable. Is that a word? You've got to go out and practice this. And that was the first time I practiced empathy, because I was like, oh, wow, this is not what I expected.
Yeah.
From a day to day of a human being in, what was it, 2010?
Yeah, and alongside that empathy side, it was then that using that behaviour change so that Mary could understand that it's a long-term goal. Yeah. It's the longest of long-term goals. Because of the amount of fat loss that Mary needed to accumulate, we worked out it took 4 years. Yeah. And that's with a calorie deficit every single day.
400, I think it was.
Yeah.
And I think that was a big takeaway for me as well. Going back to it, I'm really kind of reminiscing
that doesn't
on that.
work for 1 week only, right?
No. was every day you hear like calorie deficit, you've got to work hard, you've got to stay on the game, don't fall off the rails, and there's a lot of hype around that. We're actually like working with Mary, and a lot we talk about working with overweight clients and obese. I mentioned a minute ago about like not taking things for granted. Like Mary was an elderly lady, and she didn't know how to do a weekly shop properly. And so it's really easy to go, you need to be in a calorie deficit, but actually there's lots of other like dominoes you've got to push over before you can get to the calorie deficit. And so like over one of the goals for one of the like periods of time of training, let's call it a mesocycle, was let's go down to the shop, let me shop with you, let's educate, like what goes in this shopping basket, what would you put in the shopping basket, what could we have as a healthy alternative? And that
she naturally would just like almost empty the shelves as she walked past them, like, well, I have that.
And so it really came down to the behaviour, not just behaviour change, but the actual behaviour, the actions of day to day. We would go out for coffee and have, we'd have like catch-up sessions, we would have a cake or biscuit and whatnot. But it was a behaviour change over a period of time of like, to start off with, there was no judgment at all. There was no judgment at all, but there's no judgment on what Mary would eat at the coffee shop. But over time, I noticed her behaviour start to go, well, I won't have this today. I don't need this today. And it's really easy to go just sit in a calorie deficit or, turn up to you ready for tomorrow's training session. The results that Mary got, and all my other clients that have been overweight and obese, which has predominantly been the flag in the sand for me working with clients, has been, how do I impact the other 165, 66, 167 hours of a week? Because it's actually quite easy to get somebody to go and train with you, I'm going to say, because you turn up, they're like, they don't want to let you down, you don't want to let them down. There's a time and a place. It's like a running race. It's like the gun goes off, bam, turn up. This is when we're training, 1-to-1, small group, whatever it might be.
But that is such a small.
But it does. It's tiny. It's tiny.
If you've got a cup, it's literally like a drop in the cup. It's not. Completely. It's not the whole work. Whereas if they're invested in it, it doesn't feel like a chore. They're really excited about the outcome, and you can keep them excited for that long period of time because they are in. They are all in. That's different.
And so I think as a fit pro for me back in the trenches, late 2008 through to maybe 2012, really working with Mary, it was that like, I'm going to send you an email every day, Mary. I'm going to send you a text every day. I'm going to jump on the phone call at different times. And whilst Mary was a client, and a lot of all my clients, they're all clients, I've really learnt to have that fine balance between almost becoming their friend, but having a very professional relationship.
Nice.
Well,
that's the empathy you were talking about, right?
What's the word I'm trying to look for?
I don't know.
You know, where you unapologetically
Nice.
just land in someone's inbox or landing someone's text and go, I'm here to help, and it's going to be on a regular basis. And you will learn to hate me at times.
You were in for the long haul.
Yeah,
so
I was. Yeah, completely. You know, there's going to be
a proper wingman.
Yeah, a proper wingman. There's going to be some tough love, and it was that balance between, you know, I've really got you, but also there's some tough love. Here's a strong message today. We're going to do the work. You ready?
Perfect.
And that's what I've loved about working with obesity. Cool.
Yeah, I think that's episode 4.
Did I waffle?
4. No,
I tried to get my words out.
that's episode 4. We also talked about metabolic conditions in episode 4.
Yes.
But I think I'm just going to cap that at Mary.
Cool.
Perfect.
I like
right,
that.
Let's go episode 5, exercising with diabetes. This one, we had a really nice take on this one, which wasn't necessarily just for diabetes. You could apply it across anything. And this was I love the wording of this. A good coach is a great questions asker.
Cool. There we go.
So is that you can ask great questions to find out where your client is now, and you can manage the session, the risks inside the session, which is why we're talking about diabetes as well. So that you know that they are in the best place possible to be safe in your session. So we were talking about, have you had your breakfast this morning? What have you done? Have you had a stressful day? Knowing what it is that they're going to do, that they've done before the session, and what they're going to do afterwards, so that you can gauge what needs to happen in the session. And it's so much more in depth than just the program you've already planned.
Yeah.
But knowing that time and
Perfect.
space, knowing where they're at, and really understanding their day helps understand their levels of insulin, their blood sugar levels, the stress levels, and how that impacts the whole shebang.
If you were to look even just outside of being a FitPro, any type of coach, whether you were a relationship coach, a wealth coach, a spiritual coach, a nutritional coach, a driving instructor coach, it doesn't matter what type of coach you are. I'm going to say the umbrella here of what ties all coaches together is to ask world-class questions. And the moment you start asking a better set of questions is the moment your client gives you a better set of answers, or a new set of answers that they've not yet explored before. And something we said in that session was we learn what we hear ourselves say. And so if a client has been saying or asking the same set of questions, they get the same set of answers, they stay in this karmic loop of not making any progress towards their condition or towards their goal. Yet the coach turns up, asks a different set of questions, a set of world-class questions, we get a new answer. We break the karmic loop, and for those of you on screen, we're going around the loop, new question, new answer, new loop. Nice. And we keep going up.
So it progresses.
And it progresses. And the more information we get out of the client, underneath the surface level questions, that's going to influence and impact our programming. It's going to influence our coaching style. It's going to influence how much overload we get. It's going to influence our range of movement, on-session acute variables. But it's going to influence how we set up the session. It's going to influence our warm-up, how long that is for duration. It's going to influence our cool down and duration. It's going to influence the message we send after via text. And it all comes from better questions. And that's what I think came from.
So these better questions become the key to unlock that next level in your client's journey. And I also love that some of those questions we were talking about, relating it specifically to diabetes, was even down to the site of the injection and how that might influence, therefore, the exercises done on session.
And the rotation of those sites.
The change of that. Yeah, exactly.
Completely. And the other side to it is, from my experience, so many people that are newly diagnosed to diabetes, yes, they've gone through the health service, they do a fantastic job, they may have seen a diabetic dietitian, but likelihood in today's COVID times, the timings between those could be quite a long time, the duration. And so you could be the first person to truly sit down and give them sound advice, sound guidance, and help them read through their medications of what they can and can't do, when to take their medication.
Checking on their feet health.
Checking on their foot health, their foot care, their circulation, etc. And looking for the comorbidities that are associated heavily and the signs and symptoms with those type 2 diabetes. And educating them, because whilst you're not there, let's get this correct, you're not there to give them medical advice, but you but you are there to help break through the noise. And they might be reading something out of their medication guidance slip inside in their medication pack, and they go, I don't know what this word means. And you could help break down all of the barriers and fears that they have around their condition.
And also part of that is that observation of where they're at, that signs, their symptoms, is anything getting worse about their current conditions or new conditions starting to develop. So if you can observe that, you're then in charge of signposting.
Perfect.
And making sure that they have the adequate care they need so that they can continue to move towards that better life.
Love it. I enjoyed that one.
Yeah. Well, my favourite one's the next one. Do you know what one it is?
I genuinely can't remember. Back pain. There we go. Back pain. I don't know what.
Tackling clients with low back pain. Guess what my favourite bit of this one is?
I was so. Oh yeah. I'm gonna. Potato. One potato donut. Two potato donut. Completely, of course.
So we're talking about disc herniations.
Disc herniations.
Just brought out a nice little analogy for you of the donut. So this is the one potato donut, two potato donut.
So the potato was the vertebra body. So it could be.
Yeah. Sorry.
So that would be, for example, lumbar vertebra 5, and then the donut would be the disc, the spongy disc in between, and then the next potato would be L4, for example. Yeah. Completely. And so
we stacked these up on top of each other, and then we've done an example whereby if you were in flexion and loaded that with force, at that point it's like squeezing one side of a jam donut and the jam spurting out the back. And we were explaining that how much that relates to a disc herniation, and understanding that it's not that the whole donut slips away from the two potatoes, it's that the jam just spurts out.
Can you imagine having potato or mashed potato and donut?
I don't think it's a good combination, is it?
What I really enjoyed about that particular session, though, was this notion of joints act, muscles react. And so that, again, we go back to that conversation that so many fit pros want to plan exercises, and they reach out and go, well, what would be another exercise for legs, and how would I do this, and what exercise would go here? And we've said it so many times that exercise is the last thing to be programmed, because if we understand what's happening at a joint, what a joint can do, for example, the knee can go through flexion and extension, okay, and is in the sagittal plane. It has no ability to go through a frontal plane movement. It's got limited transverse. And so now through that understanding, and I can think about, right, what's the medial lateral axis, and I can think about, right, what is the goal here? What's the end goal I'm after my client? Now I know that the joint acts like this. I now know what the muscles around it are trying their hardest to do, and understand that the knee is a stable joint, and understand that it's got a particular role. The knee has a very particular purpose. It's not just a hinge joint like your elbow, okay? It's got a very specific role and a very specific purpose. And the moment we understand that, and I can now train towards what the knee is designed to do, which is to stabilize everything above it and below it, and work in synergy with the mobility of the ankle and mobility of the hip. And therefore I can think about, right, the 4 quads, or the rectus femoris and 3 vasti muscles, the 3 hamstrings, all of the other muscles that cross the knee.
The
adductors, sartorius, gracilis, whatnot, and the gastroc. I can now think about, like, what do I need to do in order to either A, stretch them, or B, strengthen them, and to what propensity am I going to lengthen or stretch these to in order to increase stability? What exercises now are going to make this knee more stable? And first off, can I ascertain if it's unstable? And that's what I loved about that particular episode, was this notion that joints act, muscles react. And
that's the next episode. You're ahead of yourself.
No, back pain. I'm on about back pain.
Cool.
It links to the next one as well.
Yeah.
But this understanding that the back is we're looking at a series of joints.
If somebody's experiencing pain
or a niggle or discomfort,
then it's a sign that there's something not quite right in the joints, and therefore, as a result,
muscles
that impacts
react.
the muscles.
And just because somebody has low back pain doesn't necessarily mean that that's what I'm going to then focus on. You could say, well, my client's got low back pain, I'm going to do a particular stretch that relaxes the thoracolumbar fascia, that's going to relax quadratus lumborum. But that might not necessarily be the answer through a clear postural dynamics test, like a squat assessment.
Yeah, you could be clearing up something in their ankle, which will help their back.
Precisely. And so if we actually look at the loading of whether the back experiences pain or a niggle, that could be because of the shoulder. It could be because of their ankle. It could be because of their forefoot. And it's this understanding that just because that's the final point they have pain doesn't mean that's where it started. And I think in that episode we used the analogy of a dentist and a tooth. That we have the pain in the tooth and that's where we feel the sensation, but it's actually the nerve that's irritated right up into the jaw, for example. Cool.
And what's really important to say is that because this is November the 26th, we are in Black Friday. We've actually just launched our Squat Assessment Bootcamp. And that, if you like what Neale just reeled off in terms of joints and muscles and posture and pain, then you're going to love it because it's out now.
It's out now. In fact,
that was just a real unashamed plug.
Yeah, completely.
I was like, I've got to tell you, because if you like that, you're going to want more of us.
So you're listening to this. So what day is it tomorrow?
The 26th.
It'll be the 26th tomorrow. You'll be listening to this live on the 26th, and we launch on the 26th as well. Cool.
So it's out now.
Enough said. Next
one then.
Which is episode
number 7.
Which is
training clients with mental health.
Wicked.
Oh, I forgot about this one.
I thought you said joints acting.
That's the next one.
Oh, it'll always be the next one.
It'll always be the next one.
See, Hayley's not always right.
So this one
was so cool.
There was so much in this, and my big bits from this, my big takeaway bits, best bits, is the 3 client mental health toolkits that you shared. So you actually had 3 real tangible actions and applications that people could go and use straight away.
Cool.
Want to remember what those were?
You can tell me.
The first one was positive communication tasks. So that sharing something positive with others around you and reaching out to people in a positive way as just one of the tasks that you do throughout your day to set you on a positive
regardless
track.
Of whether you are diagnosed with a mental health or regardless of whether you even feel like you're having a bad day, just actually messaging somebody that you don't usually message and say, hey mate, how you doing today? I thought of you. Do you remember this time we did X, Y, and Z? And it's, in that episode, it was nothing to do about them. It's a really selfish act, but you've got to be selfish to be you've got to be selfless to be No, you've got to be selfish.
Selfish to be selfless.
Yeah, selfish to be selfless.
Yes.
And obviously they get a really good response, but it was the process and the thoughts that you went through in order to get to that point.
Yeah.
Yeah, so positive communication.
Awesome.
We got there. You've got to be selfish to be selfless.
Yes, because that's the analogy of filling up your own glass before you try and give any water to somebody else. The next toolkit within this same one, which had 3, was about the use of NLP and hypnosis to really help people. So helping people with language, helping people make behavioural change and change their habits.
You've got to have your sensory acuity tip-top, top of mind, tip of tongue, and understand, what did someone say? Why did they say that word? Why did they say it in that way? And really starting to break down someone's language. And this is not something you learn overnight, but it's something you can learn over time.
Yeah.
And I mean, when you become aware of what people say and why they said it, is a moment you can start to really create behavioural change in the client. And that's what I suppose hypnosis and NLP is, so neuro-linguistic programming.
Why they're doing something,
why did they do that? Why did they say that? Why did they act in that certain way? And you can then challenge the client's view of the world, their map of the world, I suppose, to start to create a different way of doing things, a different set of actions. Cool.
Next toolkit was the Mercedes model.
Yeah, so this was the classic Mercedes badge on a car, and we looked at feelings, thoughts, feelings, and behaviours, or thoughts, feelings, and actions.
Yeah, exactly.
So what I think about directly impacts how I feel, and how I feel will determine how I act or behave.
We related this to anxiety and putting yourself in a place forwards where you're sort of creating this fantasy world that is bad. So let's say it's negative outcome, like putting yourself forward saying, I'm going to fail that exam.
Yeah.
The anxiety in the future, that's your thought, which creates the feeling of all those anxious feelings and that
worry,
nervousness,
unease, overwhelm.
And then that
Can't remember
changes
this.
your behaviours in the fact that, well, I'm not going to revise then because I'm going to fail anyway.
Or completely. That's the extreme version.
Yeah.
But it could be that overwhelm or worry leads you to not set up your environment or to revise, to have a messy desk, to behave and not have a structure to your revision session.
Yeah. And also we looked at it, unpicking it the other way. So if your client's got a certain action, looking at how that unpicks to being a result of how they were feeling and that results to what they were thinking.
So if someone had, for example, I don't want to demonize food, but it's an easy analogy. But let's say somebody had takeaway pizza, Domino's last night. Pizza.
We had fish and chips last night.
Let's take us then. So let's take us. Yesterday we had fish and chips last night. So and we think about, okay, so what was the feelings that led to wanting fish and chips? And then you go, right, what were my thoughts that backed up my feelings?
Yeah, so my feelings last night that led to fish and chips was I felt tired.
Yeah.
I felt like I just needed a break.
Yeah.
And my thoughts behind that was the last thing I want to do is the cooking and the washing up.
Perfect.
But also I kind of want to get out of the house and see the sea.
Perfect. So if you can reverse engineer it, you can start to really unpick, well, why did the client behave in this certain way? What was the thought and feeling behind it? And therefore we can start to break down language.
That was a really powerful episode.
I really enjoyed that. And we also talked about the work of Dr. Sano in that one, of TMS. So
I spoke about that in the low back pain one.
Did we as well?
Yeah.
Cool. Maybe they've all kind of moulded into one
for
me. I loved it.
Yeah, in the low back pain. I actually wrote it down as my second point that I really liked.
Oh, okay,
but
cool.
because you had about joints, I was like, well, I'll leave that one there.
Cool. Okay, so
but TMS was really powerful because it was about the pain that somebody experiences, and that isn't necessarily just a reflection on a physical pain, but also tension inside their body caused by something non-physical, so psychological.
Completely, and it's not to say that, and that's what I love.
It still exists.
Yeah, completely, because you can't see anxiety. You can only see the actions or the behaviours or the outcome. You can only see the devastation at the end of it. You can't pick up and put stress in a bucket. Does that make sense? And so it's really hard to kind of say, well, is it real? Is it not real? 100% it's real. But it's between the ears of you that individual experience it, between the right ear and left ear. And what I liked about Dr. Sano's work with TMS was this understanding that you're feeling a certain level of discomfort and pain, and what does that mean for you? And is it real? Because you can't see it, you can't touch it. And that led us on to this discussion in that episode as well,
what is pain
but what is pain, but also the mental health is a state. It's a state of mind. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's not something you catch. It's not contagious.
And it's not a label either.
And it's not a label.
So it's just that's the state you are in that moment.
Like if I wanted to experience anxiety right now, I could experience anxiety. Does that make me anxious? Does that give me a level of mental health? That's where the TMS went down. It's like, well, some people might say yes and some people might say no, but for me, it's very real. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so stress, anxiety, depression, PTSD is literally just a state. It's a being, and you create it. You don't catch it. You create it. You don't suddenly go, oh, I've caught this. You don't catch it off somebody else.
You don't become it. Yes.
You don't become it. So as quick as I can feel stressed, I can be as quick as I can feel happy.
You can create
it's a roller coaster.
Yeah,
completely.
Nice.
And it's this education for the client that I can help impact the client's world to break the highest levels of stress with the highest levels of happiness or joy, whatever. And it's just, I'm going to say it's a choice at the end of the day.
Yeah.
It's a choice to choose a state. I can choose any state I want to be in. at the end of the day.
And we were really dialing into that on that episode. It was a really powerful episode, the mental health one. That was fantastic. Right.
I think they've all been powerful. I've loved them all.
Great,
I feel like I'm waffling big time between them. It's really hard to find the lines between each one.
Well, the next one we've already covered, which is episode 8, training clients with musculoskeletal conditions. Now, the takeaway point that I put down that was the best bits was joints act, muscles react.
Which I've already talked about.
Gone there. So the other thing that was really impactful for me was talking about the idea of fall prevention, talking about the dangers around hip fractures and joint replacements.
Yeah.
And really the severity, again, similar to what we said with asthma, of just because it's a word that you hear a lot of, in terms
my
of
gran's
fractures or hip replacement or arthritis,
completely.
doesn't mean that it's something that comes without a risk. So it's knowing that if that's the case, it's still a condition, it's still got considerations.
What I really liked about that episode was like the tiny impacts to a session plan, such as gripping the barbell.
Oh, of course.
You remember with like rheumatoid arthritis and looking at the discomfort in particular joints and really thinking about the journey of the client.
Is that Alan?
Alan, yeah, completely. And really thinking about the journey of the client of what they're experiencing right now, their level of discomfort, their level of pain. And thinking that first thing in the morning, they're going to have an element of joint stiffness, their dexterity is going to be down. So could I change that? Knowing those adaptations. And it's those tiny, dare I say, they are tiny adaptations, but they have phenomenal impact on whether or not a client enjoys the session.
Like you said before, those small hinges create the enjoyment for the entire session, which creates the adherence, which is the big door.
Yeah.
So like, it's just those.
The other thing we talked about in that session, again, around say like arthritis and rheumatoid arthritis, was it affects clients in all totally different ways. But if we talk about the dexterity of, say, impacting the wrists and the fingers, because obviously you use that on your phone to eat, knife and fork, in and around the kitchen to drive. They're the things that impact our quality of life. And so a client is quite often aware of their rheumatoid arthritis and affecting their hands. Mm-hmm. And they may have been diagnosed with it around and say you've definitely got rheumatoid arthritis in your knuckles, for example. But other places around the body, such as the spine, such as the hips, such as the shoulders and knees and whatever, are also common sites for this to appear. Yeah. And so whilst they say the GP hasn't diagnosed that person with rheumatoid arthritis or arthritis in other areas of the body, that's not to say that those joints aren't being affected by it. Does that make sense? It took me a little while to get there. Even if it's not diagnosed, knowing that there's a risk associated, especially with somebody as they're getting older. Yes, completely.
Or if they've already got rheumatoid in one area.
It doesn't necessarily just go, well, I've been diagnosed with it in my hands, I'm going to wait for a diagnosis for it in my spine, for example, or in my hip. Yeah. Because the likelihood is that...
But then the pains and niggles all relate across, don't they?
Completely. So it's knowing that some conditions around like musculoskeletal, they're going to feel that very much so in one part of their body, but other parts of their body are also going to be impacted and affected.
Yes.
There we go.
Right, we got there.
We did.
It's good. I like it. Next one.
I am on track on Hayley's plan.
Episode 9, the final one, because obviously we're on 10 now.
We're on 10 now.
Episode 9 was comorbidities and medications, which doesn't feel like very long ago that we did. And what I loved about this bit, is my best bits, is that we used SOAP to structure planning by grabbing everything and bringing it all together. And we also looked at coaching a client 160 hours a week.
160 hours a week?
168
hours a week.
Can't read my writing.
Completely. Maybe they just had a really long sleep on one of the days. But yeah, comorbidities is the secondary condition. So somebody might have obesity as their primary condition, and a comorbidity would be hypertension, would be diabetes type 2, back pain and so forth. And so comorbidities, it's understanding that the client turns up with a particular goal. For example, they want to lose weight, and then they've got a primary condition and then a set of comorbidities. And it's understanding that each condition has a ACSM guideline of what you can and can't do, so contraindicative exercises. It also comes with a clear frequency, intensity, time and type fit principle.
What recommendations should they be doing? And the
specific recommendations to improve them health-wise. Now that doesn't
stop
them.
And a load of medications.
And a load of medications. And so it's kind of like baking the nicest cake ever and having the perfect recipe.
I could do some cake.
We could all. For those of you who don't know, Hayley's got the fastest cake hands going. On our last PT course on graduation day, one of the learners, her mum had made a big cake for everybody, and Hayley's hands were the first in there with the biggest slice.
Yeah.
So we go. So if you've learned anything today, it's that Hayley has the fastest cake hands in parallel coaching. It's simple, it's just unapologetic. I like cake. You're like Brick out of Anchorman. I love cake. Brick loves lamp. Amazing. Anyway, comorbidities are...
Yeah, so it's that stacking of conditions, stacking of all the issues, and knowing how to bring all those together, which is why we use the SOAP protocol.
Which is subjective, which is all about mindset or what's going on in the head.
And things that are evaluated by opinion, really. So questionnaires, food diaries,
whatever. We're looking at values, we're looking at beliefs, we're looking at for clients' priorities, what they believe to be true, their map of a world, what they see.
And then objective, was the next bit, which is then all the physical measurements, and that might be fitness test, weight, height, whatever. And then you bring all that together in assessment, which is A. And this is where it gets juicy. This is where if you've got comorbidities, you literally stack it all up.
Yeah.
You stack up all these comorbidities. You stack up all the knowledge that you had from subjective, all the knowledge you had from objective, so you can make a decision based on all of it as to how you do your planning. And it helps highlight what the priorities are.
Yes.
And then you can go into planning.
And that's the beauty of it, because you can... The client may have said something in consultation 1 or 2 or in an early session or just over the phone or via email, and you think that was their thoughts or their opinions of nutrition or whatever. And now you can pull that into your assessment and think, well, how am I going to work with that? What is my primary goal here? What's the client's primary goal? What do they want to achieve by week 4? What do I need to really focus on to get a physiological and anatomical adaptation in order to get closer to their goal, but on this understanding that Rome wasn't built in a day. It's going to take time to get to their goal. And it's that assessment of drawing everything together before you can then jump into a plan. And yet so many fit pros jump straight to the plan without any assessment. They might do a couple of basic tests, but they haven't done any subjective behind it, and they haven't got a strategy. And that's what I love about SOAP assessments, is it gives you a very clear strategy, a very clear protocol to follow, and says, right, consultation 1, subjective, consultation 2, objective. Go home, go back to the office, go back to a drawing board, big bit of paper. What's their goal? What's my goal? What's the primary focus? What's the primary condition?
What were the conditions?
What were the secondary conditions? What are the medications? What's the ACSM guidelines?
What can I do with them? What can't I do with them?
And you're like, okay, cool. Now I've got all of this data on my assessment sheet. Now let's start planning. Perfect.
And that's a long way from just randomly selecting some exercises the first time you see somebody.
Completely.
And what I also love about that is that the planning thing includes the activity, the mindset, the nutrition, the NEAT. It's not just the physical session.
Well, that was something we talked about, I think.
168 hours of it.
And then we talked about this kind of three-pronged approach, but it wasn't just...
Like a trident.
Yeah, or tripod.
I was like, three-pronged.
There we go. But anyway, moving on quickly. But it was this three-pronged approach, wasn't it, of exercise, nutrition, and mindset, and NEAT. So NEAT would come into exercise.
Yeah.
Okay. And there's clearly tons and tons of research, and we've mentioned it in various episodes, but those that just tackle it from an exercise perspective aren't going to achieve their goal nowhere near as quick as if they could, where they do a holistic, well-rounded approach with mindset and nutrition. And those that just tackle, say,
just nutrition don't get the same benefits.
Don't get the same benefits. And it's not just about getting there quicker, it's about getting there more effectively, more efficiently, and having overall behaviour change. So if I was to summarise the entire season 4, it was this understanding that as common clinical conditions rise, we have an unhealthy relationship with food, an unhealthy relationship with life, an unhealthy relationship with inactivity or activity. We have an unhealthy relationship sometimes with ourselves. And
to turn that around and make it more healthy,
we
need all of those.
Is a behavioural change approach of valuing, prioritising a different set of daily actions that don't necessarily have to be far from what you are currently doing, but they certainly need to be different to yield a different result.
Hey, what a summary.
I tried.
It's almost like,
I don't know if I could say it again.
That's great. I think, just summarised it all. And also that, like, putting that health back into the health and fitness.
Yes.
Knowing that you guys listening as Fit Pros, you've got your flag in the sand and you're going, I want to help these people specifically, and this is.
And that's what I want to know. That's what I want to know from you is what flag are you going to put in the sand today, this week, or in 2021 that says I'm going to work with this type of people, whether it's just males or just females or mixed or particular age group with a particular condition or a particular niggle or pain or problem. You go, this is my mini manifesto. I represent and I'm taking a stand and I'm at the forefront, and people are gonna hear me beat the drum of what is that X, what's that missing thing. So you can message us on all social media channels, so on our Facebook, all below, and definitely drop us an email and let us know. I really do want to know what flag are you going to place in the sand and say, I stand for this and I'm going to become the expert in X. Because without you in the trenches, we're not going to fight the good fight, and you guys genuinely are in the trenches. It's your action that
then makes the difference, isn't it?
That's the action, that's the behaviour. Outside of that, we also really want to know, what have you enjoyed most about season
What are your
number
best bits?
4? What are your best bits at season number 4?
Yeah. Also, although this is the last episode of season 4, it means we have a whole new opportunity for you to join us for season 5.
Yes.
Which is a little bit different.
Season 5 is going to be an advent calendar special. So next week, you are going to start to get a daily dose of us on the podcast on FitPro Sessions.
Yeah.
So on December 1st, we will open up the first advent calendar door with something motivational message, a task, an actionable task, but there'll be between 4 and 8, maybe 5 and 10 minutes max. Real short, sharp and sweet snippets so you can tune in daily. To
progress you as a Fit Pro.
To progress, because during the month of December, a lot of Fit Pros take their eyes off the ball. They take their eyes off the game. They accept that clients aren't going to be signing up when, quite honestly, that's a I'm going to call it.
It's just another month. They certainly can be.
I'm going to call it a faulty belief. I'm going to call it a not true belief.
That's again that Mercedes model, right? That thought, feeling,
yeah, exactly.
Not going to take action.
People are focusing on Christmas, and so maybe it's the idea of the next season is to take you right up to the 24th for you to keep your eyes on the game and in the game. And I think it's needed more than ever as we come out of coronavirus lockdown, as well as a fitness industry. And we're going back into the gyms, or gyms open up December 3rd. So I think I'm going to love season 5. And then we will take a small mini break over Christmas and let you enjoy Christmas and relax. But there will be a bonus end of year season finale for season 5 before we go back into season 6, which will start in January.
There you go. That's the rundown.
Any questions, we'd love you to reach out. I really want to know, what is that flag in the sand? What do you represent? Bam, this is my mini manifesto. I'm going to work with, I don't know, obese guys between the ages of 30 and 50, and I'm going to tackle this, and I'd love their secondary comorbidity to be this condition, and I'm going to be blah blah blah.
This is the problem they face.
Yeah, this is the problem they face.
Or turn around and say, I work with people that have pain, in particular back pain. I work with people that have niggles in these particular areas. What is it you're going to do?
What is it you're going to do? We really want to know. So
how are you going to help us flatten off that curve of the rise of common clinical conditions?
And what a wicked way to end. So if you are on any of our social platforms, make sure you hit like, comment and share. Make sure you...
If you're on iTunes, leave us a 5-star review. And if you're on YouTube, subscribe so you can get some more of them.
And on that note, we will see you bright and breezy on the December 1st Advent Calendar door opening next week. See you later.
Bye.
Hi, I'm Neil Bergman.
And I'm Hayley Bergman. Over the last 10 years, we've helped thousands of fitness professionals to get qualified, learn with simplicity, and coach clients with confidence.
We're the first to say that learning and being a Fit Pro doesn't have to be hard work, and that with the right structure, support and resources, you can become a confident and knowledgeable fitness professional that is dedicated to more.
So how do you learn, qualify and kickstart as a Fit Pro? This is the FitPro Session Podcast with Parallel Coaching.